All right, we're going to go ahead and start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this Monday morning, Friday night. Thank you for the coffee from the CMD team. And we want to welcome 9.8 Capital to the press conference this morning. And my name is Felipe Romero. I am the Director of Communications and Marketing for the City of Brownsville. You know, this is an exciting time for Brownsville as we continue to make strides in innovation and technology. The Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation, together with the City of Brownsville, are excited as we continue to expand Brownsville's new space ecosystem. And with us today, we have Mayor Trey Mendez, Ms. Helen Ramirez, Executive Director of GBIC and Deputy City Manager for the wonderful City of Brownsville, along with Mr. J. Brandt Arseneau, founder of 9.8 Capital. And with that said, our Mayor, Trey Mendez, will say a few words. As a reminder, please ask your questions during our Q&A portion of the press conference. There will not be any time for side interviews at the end of the conference. Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you, Felipe. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Another exciting day in Brownsville, Texas. It's in a series of many exciting days this past year. This microphone. All right, there we go. It's been a series of many exciting days this year, despite what we've been through over the past year and a half. Brownsville has continued to move, and we've continued to move very quickly. And if you haven't been paying attention over the last year plus, we've been really focusing on aerospace and focusing on the space industry, which Morgan Stanley says is going to be $1 trillion industry by the year 2040. So certainly Brownsville sees an opportunity there. With our launch capability, we're one of the few places in the United States that actually has launch capability, but we see an opportunity there for all sorts of other companies in the aerospace industry. So Brownsville's been working extremely hard to try and recruit those companies, and today's another day where we get to make an exciting announcement. And for me, it's something that we've really been working hard over quite some time. Helen's been doing a fantastic job. You're going to get to meet Brandt here in a little bit. And Brandt's been a vital partner for us here at the City of Brownsville, not just for his own companies and his own interests, but also bringing us a lot of leads and a lot of other companies that are interested in relocating or coming to Brownsville. So today we are going to be announcing 9.8 Capital, and which is a company. I'll let Brandt talk more about that, but it seems like I said, we have launch capability. We have some other companies that are coming, doing some other things. But the one key component that's really been missing when we talk about assets and we talk about what the City of Brownsville has to offer, the missing piece has been capital. And today we're going to hear why this is so important for us. We have a company that's going to be located in Brownsville that actually fills the capital component of the space industry and the startup industry in particular. We also have another company that Brandt's going to talk about called the Hatchery. And I'm particularly excited about the Hatchery because it kind of fits with what we've been doing in Brownsville, which is really trying to foster a startup ecosystem and trying to get companies to start here, because we see that if they start here, they stay here. And that's something that we're really excited about. We have other community partners such as Texas Southmost College that we've been talking to that's filling the gap and really helping us on the workforce side to make sure that we're ready for the jobs that are coming. And I can't say enough good things about our community college. And excited to hear a little bit more from Brandt. So as mayor, again, just gives me great excitement to be here and to just talk about what's happening in Brownsville and all the things that are coming. Today it's Brandt's Day and it's 9.8 Capital and the Hatchery's Day. So I'll let, I believe Helen is next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And now I'd like to introduce Ms. Helen Ramirez, Executive Director of GBIC.
I know we normally do not like Mondays, but when you have good energy and a new company to announce, those are the best Mondays of the week. So I'm very excited. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to ruin it, but I want to emphasize that the mission of the City of Brownsville City Commission, they have a strategic vision, and one of their main pillars is economic development. So the mayor's words demonstrate that emphasis on creating a sustainable economy for our current and future generations. At the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation, our mission is also to bring new companies, to grow them, to welcome new and to create new companies in Brownsville, Texas. That's the way we're going to diversify our jobs and actually encourage our students to stay here, whether they are coming from or graduate from TSC or University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, that they have the opportunity to stay, to grow there, to create a family, and really to live here and have a wonderful quality of life. 9.8 company capital is not only about jobs, but you're going to see it's a whole ecosystem of what they're creating here in Brownsville. They're really looking at the pathway to success for the hatchery or new jobs, and also, you know, what happens, who do they hire? Who do they hire that are local? So you're gonna really see how they touch upon different points such as education, business, entrepreneurship, and new space economy. When we grow our local ecosystem and space, that's what we've been doing, whether it's supporting SpaceX and their growth, which is it's incredible since 2019, what they've grown to date and what they'll be growing with their next launch. From them to Space Ventures, Expanding Frontiers, Space Channels, and other supply chain and distribution companies that are working with many of these companies. Our job is to make it easy for them to be here, to create that ecosystem so they can be sustainable and be here a long time, and also to be able to hire local. So I want these companies to stay in Texas, to come to Brownsville, and not really consider Florida or California or Colorado. This is the place to be. Be bold, be Brownsville. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. And now, without further ado, we'll introduce our rock star, J. Brand Arseneau from 9.8 Capital. Welcome, sir.
Hi, Brownsville. I was really excited to get here last night. The last time I was here, it was, I think, 38, 39 degrees Celsius. So I got off the plane last night. It was, I think, 26, and it was so nice. But there's many, many reasons I'm coming to Brownsville. And I'll make that kind of announcement, which is just a little further explanation that Mayor Mendez said. But I want to tell you why I got here, how I got here, and why Brownsville is so exciting to me. And I'll try not to take too long, but the journey is 30 years. So hopefully I can boil that down to 3 minutes. And that's when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. And I grew up on the east coast of Canada. My two grandfathers were lobster fishermen. I didn't have a lot of support and people that understood what I wanted to be. They thought, oh, there's the weird one. He wants to be an astronaut. And eventually I found out, hey, you have to do a PhD or be a fighter pilot to be an astronaut. And in Canada, we only have 4 fighter jets. So that kind of was ruled out. And I said, well, I'll engineer my education to be an astronaut. And I did electrical engineering in the 80s. I did my PhD research in the 90s in neural networks. And at the end of it, I applied to be an astronaut. And I got rejected, like 99.9%. And I went from Scotland down to London. And that was a period in the 90s that the banks were hiring mathematicians and physicists to do electronic trading and calculate risk in a more mathematical way called quants. And I started to get into that business, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I did 30 years on Wall Street with JP Morgan, or around 27 years. I became an expert in electronic trading and risk, and absolutely loved it. And just recently, last 3 or 4 years, I started realizing a lot of space companies were happening. And I was actually out in California, and I thought it was just Elon, Jeff, and Richard. And I found out there was hundreds of space companies. So I reached out to a fellow Canadian, Chris Hadfield, who's one of our celebrated astronauts. And I said, Chris, is it true that there's lots of space companies? He said, there's hundreds. And that very day, I said, I'm going to get in the space industry. And the advice that came back to me was, hey, we don't want you to build a rocket. You probably can't do it as well as Elon anyway. What we need in the space industry is capital, finance, and business development. A lot of these engineers and scientists don't have the experience. So I was a little disappointed because I wanted to build a rocket or a nuclear reactor. but they told me to start building capital products, which kind of sunk in. And my wife said, well, if you can't be Elon, maybe you could be the JP Morgan of space, which I thought I liked the sound of that. And if I can just do a little bit, it would be great. So that set me on a path of designing an ecosystem of finance and capital products to help the space industry. And what happens in emerging markets is the capital markets that support that emerging market lags behind the market. There's not a lot of capital for new industries that people don't understand. Wall Street doesn't understand it. Big alternative investment managers don't understand it. So it takes a little time. So I built this blueprint of supporting companies from early stage to late stage, with private equity to public credit, from investment capital to working capital. So I have an ecosystem of companies. And then what I did, and this is where Brownsville comes in, I overlaid that product strategy with a geographic strategy. I said, okay, where do we want to be in the world? Because we need to be near our clients, either near our clients or near our investors. And if you think about just North America for a second, New York City is great for raising capital, great for high-end restaurants. But it's not great for deploying capital to space companies. It's just not. California is pretty good for raising capital and pretty good for deploying capital. Texas is very good. We have 70 years of space heritage within Texas. It's very good for deploying capital, not bad for raising capital. So we kind of had our North America location strategy kind of baked. And then I don't know what happened, but someone told me about Brownsville, and it was a person related to Elon, and he said Brownsville is going to be important. So I made my first trip probably a year ago, and the buzz I felt when I got here, and I'm sitting in a hotel with an electrician from Calgary, Canada, a plumber from Australia, I forget what they call them, but the guys that hang off the rope off the side, from I think Austria, and the buzz in the hotel was just fantastic. And I felt it, every time I came back, I felt it surging. And it reminded me in the 90s at JP Morgan, I built a piece of software that we sold to a company out in Silicon Valley, and I was lucky enough to go visit this company several times. And that was the 90s, and the dot-com bubble was starting to churn, and excitement, and there was a company that said, hey, Brant, why don't you stay in the Valley and work here? And I said, no, I got to go back to Wall Street. And I regret that a little bit my whole life, and I feel that about Brownsville, and I don't want to miss that opportunity to be here when Brownsville becomes the Silicon Valley of space. So we chose this as a very, very important part of our ecosystem. And to further that, we think about, this is in a global industry, so we think about outside of North America as well. And we think about, we have to be in Europe, we have to be in the Middle East, and we have to be in Asia. I think most people know a country in Asia that we need to think about, but we don't want to really talk about it yet because it's too complex. Europe, so we put that on hold. Europe is, from a regulatory framework, from financial regulatory, there's too many different regimes, so that's complicated. The Middle East is very interesting, and I've been to Dubai several times, and I feel a similar buzz in Dubai and Saudi. But I can tell you and I was just there last week, when I came back to Brownsville last night, the excitement and the buzz is even more overwhelming than other parts of the world. So that's why I'm here today. And in finance, I've always felt that you can't do everything from New York City or London. You have to be close to your clients. You have to be close to your capital. And I would like to be the first finance person to be in Brownsville when this becomes a Silicon Valley of space. We can say, hey, remember, we went there first. Just like in the 60s and 70s, the Sand Hill Road, you probably know all the different VCs are on the Sand Hill Road in California. We want to be that here in Brownsville. So we're announcing that we're putting a portion of our operations here in Brownsville. And one of the companies, so right now we have 4 companies. One is called 10MK, which is 10 million degrees Kelvin, which is the temperature stars are hatched within the nebula. That's our hatchery that the mayor referred to. So we're going to hatch brand new companies. And the next company is Space Ventures, which is a company that does public raising for companies. The third company is Gravity, which I'm in the process of raising funds for now. It's targeted to be a $250 million venture fund. And then the last one is 9.8 which is the quarterback, which I said in Dubai last week and no one got it, but you guys do. It's the quarterback kind of managing the group and the relationships. And the last thing we want to do, the hatchery is there to kind of spawn innovation and create companies so the rest of the ecosystem can fund them. And then the other part of this is workforce development. Where are the people, where is the skill set coming from, right? Because there's a lack of skill set in this industry. So the first thing we did is we're thinking about, not thinking about, we're going to do it, is quite a large scholarship program where we're going to promote, on the professional side, a MBA program for a space MBA. So we'd like to give it to the University of Texas and the University of Arizona and possibly something in Dubai and create that workforce and focus on equality and diversity, trying to get more women into this industry, getting more people of color, people of economically disadvantaged, because a lot of MBA programs are quite expensive. And then the trade, this is a unique industry that requires just as much trade. Like I said, all those wonderful electricians and plumbers, we need that group of people with our engineers and our scientists. So you can see it's a whole ecosystem that is a big flywheel of success. And the group of people that I'm doing it with, all my operating partners, we're not necessarily doing it because we love finance. We're doing it because we feel the value of space is incredible. And that's the biggest question I always get. What's the value of space? And you know, the old question was GPS. It is kind of tiring and boring. But now if you think about what space is doing for us, there is many, many constellations up there looking at Earth, observing Earth, detecting wildfires before they happen, or slightly after they happen so we can get them stopped. Detecting oil spills as they happen and avoiding that disaster. Detecting human trafficking in the South Sudan and stopping that from happening. So there's massive value just with looking at Earth. Eventually, we're going to move some of the Earth-hurting industries like power generation into space, manufacturing into space. And one thing I'll remind everybody, just because space is big, we can't start polluting space either. So we need to kind of think about that. So we're very, very excited. Every time I come here, I get excited about the energy and the commitment from the city and the associated ecosystem. And we're going to be here a long time. So thanks, and hopefully we'll speak to all of you. Is there questions now? Or? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arseneau. There's, the workforce development is crucial, and then I'd also like to acknowledge President of the Texas Southmost College, Dr. Rodriguez, and Executive Director of TSC Workforce Development, Mr. Simon. Thank you for being here today. And without further ado, we'll open the floor to our media for questions. Please make sure your mics are on.
Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Mic check. Mr. Arseneau, my name is Steve Clark. I'm with the Brownsville Herald. Welcome to Brownsville.
Thank you.
Can I get your first name again?
It's Joseph Brett Arseneau.
And what is the significance of 9.8, the name of the company?
9.8 is the gravity of Earth. So a couple of companies aren't associated to gravity, but we're thinking about kind of associating everything with gravity and force.
Okay, and you mentioned a lot of moving parts. What is actually going to be located here, and are you going to be servicing companies here or all around the world from here?
A little bit of both. So we're going to build in the finance industry. In no way is this meant to sound negative, but we say front office, back office. So we're going to locate a lot of our back office functions here, like PR, like marketing, like communications. But as the space community evolves and grows here, we'll have more front office deploying capital here. That's one of the key values we believe 9.8 brings, is once there's local companies here to fund, we want to fund them.
Okay, and what will your initial footprint be in terms of how many people you employ or actually have in Brownsville?
We'd like to look at 10 to 20 people over the next year, 12 to 24 months.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an office already?
We're just looking at an office.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
This too is a question for you, Mr. Arseneau. You mentioned that you can't build rockets as well as Richard, Jeff, or Elon, okay? So, but you are betting on being close to Elon in terms of your bet is this is going to, you've said today, this is going to be the Silicon Valley of space. Why will it be here rather than where Richard's building rockets or Jeff's building rockets?
Well, I think two parts to that is vertical launch and the authority, the launch authority that we have from Brownsville is still very attractive. And Elon, you know, it's kind of like a mall where you have your anchor tenant of Sears or Kmart, if they still exist. And Elon's kind of that person, and he's changed a lot in thinking. So I think it's important that he's here, but it can't just be him. You know, and I think there's going to be a lot of companies that come here for that launch. And I mentioned I was in UAE last week, and I spoke to the head of the UAE Space Agency, and they have a different plan, just like Canada. Canada's plan is not to kind of launch rockets; it's to build robotic arms, which we're kind of known for, and to support the more exploration launch capabilities of the United States. So I do think Brownsville will have that launch advantage for quite a while. Horizontal launch is going to be important, but I think it's years away. So I do, and what I say, is Brownsville the Silicon Valley of space? It's not, but I feel it's going to be. I have that visceral feeling, and I'm starting to get data points behind that visceral feeling that it's going to happen. And I'm going to we're going to build this office, we're going to keep coming back and wait for it, and not wait for it to happen, but help it happen.
If I could just add to that, one of the ways he is going to make it happen is within this 3-year period, he's going to facilitate $10 million of venture capital invested here in Brownsville for Brownsville Creek companies. And I think that's very important because you're first, but also you're creating it, and then from that, we believe it'll continue evolving.
I have a question for you. You're going to be doing local financing for startup companies because of the space emphasis as Brownsville goes forward, economic development-wise. Are these people going to be like the plumbers and the electricians you were associating with in the hotel when you first came, or does everything have to go back to the gravity and go back to those things that you mentioned during your speech?
Just to clarify the question, is it the type of companies that we're going to invest in?
Yes.
Yeah, I think our main, and because we have different products, our main focus is to help space companies, but we do have a mandate to help adjacent industries like solar power, like nuclear power. We're going to stay within deep tech. That's our expertise. I don't have expertise in kind of evaluating other infrastructure like hotels or conference centers. So yeah, it'll be space technology and adjacent technology.
I would like to have the microphone back for a final question of the mayor. It's on topic.
Stephanie from KRGV.
Hello. Sorry, can you repeat? I'm so sorry. Can you please repeat your name for me?
Joseph Brandt Arseneau.
Good morning, Mr. Arseneau. Just would want to know what draws you to Brownsville to kind of create this Silicon Valley for space, and what kind of partnerships or other businesses are you working with just to stay connected and informed?
Well, just to highlight what I said earlier, when we looked at, we want to be near our clients, the companies that we're going to invest in, or the investors that we raise capital. And there's some natural places within North America that have been good for space: Los Angeles, Colorado, and Florida. And when we look at Texas in general has been pro-business for a while. And layer on top of that the heritage, 70 years of heritage of space, right from Houston, I don't know if we call it the Space Coast, but from Houston down to here. It's very, very exciting. And there's a difference in thinking, and I don't know why it's taking hold here in Texas. Maybe it's because Elon thinks that way. is if you think about how space technology has been done for the last 70 years, it was a long Gantt chart, a long plan of reducing risk. And it was very expensive and it took a long time. And the perception was that approach really reduced risk. And now we have this gentleman here who takes more of a Silicon Valley approach to risk management called Agile and said, okay, I'm gonna fire something up and collect data. And that method, so we kind of call it new space. And new space, when we look at Florida, new space is being more embraced by this region. And I think that's the way forward for really getting big innovation. That's probably the biggest attraction to coming to Brownsville. And sorry, you had a second part to that question?
What companies, or maybe you can also talk about the scholarship you spoke on earlier earlier.
Yeah, so this is in development. I think, we think it's going to be a $10 to $20 million scholarship program. I want this, I would love for this to be a co-op, first year taught, second year co-op, so that skill set comes into the community. Because what I'd like to happen is half the students come from an engineering background, and we teach them what a balance sheet, a cash flow statement is, and more than that. But and then the other half are business people, and teach them about technology and how to and bring that together in an MBA, and we create a workforce. Now that's just the professional side. We still need a lot of workforce on the trades as well, because there's specialty trades now that are incredibly important, like 3D printing, additive manufacturing, that is adding big disruptions in innovation. So,
Let me add something here. What Brant's doing is something that really a lot of people are missing, and he's, believe it or not, even despite the showmanship, Brant's actually pretty humble in some of the things he's accomplished. There's 3 companies on the platform that have already been funded. You may want to talk a little bit about those, Brant, but there's nobody that's really doing venture capital when it comes to space. And this is a huge opportunity based on the economics of the space industry, and especially new space. What's happening and where it's going is huge. And nobody's actually really funding or doing these startups and startup capital funding like Brent is. And there's success stories already, but when you kind of see where this economy is going, we've started to kind of behind the scenes also forge some partnerships with other cities in the state of Texas. And the Guardian was kind enough to publish an op-ed that I helped contribute to a couple days ago, talking about space and where Texas really stands in this space race 2.0, right? And it's important to position ourselves to be the leader and continue to be the leader. We do have 70 years of legacy when it comes to space travel, but when you think about it, we've kind of been dormant in a way during this whole entire time. And Florida is a huge competitor. They're known as the Space Coast. They have launch. They have all sorts of companies out there. They have capital. Colorado is merging with Space Force and other things. California has always been a player. Alabama is a huge player now as well. And in order for us to remain competitive as a state, we need to really start looking at our assets and what it is we can offer to companies that are looking to locate. So we have to look at various things. One of them is workforce. And thanks to the college and university and our partners and our neighbors to the south in Matamoros, we have an advantage when it comes to workforce. We're obviously well positioned globally for launch, which is huge. And if you create that atmosphere, a business-friendly environment, and you provide incentives like we're doing, we're going to be able to attract that. But that's not enough. You also need what I spoke to earlier, which is the main component here, which is finance and capital. And that's why I think this is such a huge endeavor and so big for us here in Brownsville. But also it has ramifications across the state in our competition against other states. And with some of the things Brant's doing and some of the companies he's funding, it's a global presence and a global impact.
And I think the mayor brings up a very good point that maybe I don't describe well enough, is we're trying to create an ecosystem of financial products. We have a venture fund, but I don't want to be a venture capitalist. Meaning, if you're only a venture capitalist, you only see the world one way. You only see, hey, I need a 10 or 20x company, and that's all I'm ever going to invest in. How about the 3 or 4x company? The company that does vibration testing, radiation testing, and thermal testing, that is never going to be a 10 or 20x company, is going to be a 3 or 4x company. It still needs capital. So what we, and no disrespect to all my VC partners, which fill a very important capital role, what we wanted to do is create a company that puts the relationship with the founder and the executive first. We want to have a relationship with that person, he or she, throughout their whole life cycle. And when they're at an early stage, we have a financial product that they could use, and it's kind of pre-VC. It's space ventures you raise from the public, you can raise up to $5 million a year. And what we want to do is get them into a position that then, if they're a 10 or a 20x company, they can raise from VCs. Now, we're one of those VCs, but they might get term sheets from other VCs as well. And then after VC, at some point you run out of equity to sell. There's no more equity to sell. So you need working capital, you need credit. You need either collateralized credit or uncollateralized. So we actually have a bill on the floor of Congress right now asking for loan guarantees to help create credit products down the road for working capital. So we're looking at this, and we want to help the space industry in a collaborative way. So we know if we do financing well, you make money, right? You just make money. So we didn't focus on that, right? We wanted to create an ecosystem to help companies right to the end. So.
And I had a question for you, Mayor, about that op-ed. Your headline, your title was, "Without a Lone Star Space Plan, Texas will lose its advantage." You've explained why. What's been the reaction of the state leadership? Do you believe they understand the importance of this, and are they going to respond in a positive way?
Thanks, Steve. Actually, that's part of the reason that we did this op-ed, and you saw we had Texas 2036, the executive director of Texas 2036, which is huge. Then we had Captain Tim Coper, who's an astronaut from Texas, and now working at MDA, which is a Canadian company that does robotic arms. And we also had Maynard Holt, who's a finance guy in the oil and gas industry. But that's, like I said, that's part of the reason we did this, because we want our legislators, we want the rest of the state to wake up and not be, we have Texas swagger, but we also have to realize sometimes that even though we're the largest state in the U.S., continental U.S., that we have competition. And if we don't wake up and we don't start allocating resources at the state level, we're going to lose out. So since this has been published, we've been having this conversation for a couple months, and like I said, we're really trying to forge these allegiances with Houston and with McGregor and with some other parts of the state. But we are getting the attention we wanted from the legislature. The Aerospace Caucus, I'm very close to the chair, Dennis Paul, the vice chair also, who's actually from McGregor, Doc Anderson. And we've been having these conversations, and they understand the value, and they're really doing their part at the legislature to get this conversation going. And over the last couple of days, I know we've gotten the attention we wanted, and hopefully this creates the end goal, which is creating more resources and allocating more capital to this industry.
But right now, the way you would describe it is the state as a whole, the leadership in Texas has to wake up.
They have to wake up, definitely, because if we don't get serious about this industry, we've been heavily reliant on oil and gas for the state economy, and obviously the state's done a good job attracting businesses, but this is something that we're already well positioned for, that we've been leaders in historically, but other states want a piece of this pie, and we're losing out. So yes, we definitely need to wake up.
If I might add something. To the mayor's point in terms of, this is the only place you can launch in Texas. And that's very important. So recognizing that and having the rest of the state, I think, recognize that and support that is very important. Also, I know that in Los Angeles and South Bay, many of our aerospace, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, they're very secretive in many of their, the community didn't really know what was going on behind those hangars. And I think what's unique about Starbase South Launch Site being here, and also they've located 100,000 square feet near and around our Brownsville airport, and they'll be occupying it this month, is that you can see what's happening. We have thousands of kids from Brownsville go and visit, and TSC students and UTRGV students go and see what's going on. It's nothing behind a closed door. Mission Control is no longer in Houston. It is in Hawthorne, California, because of a commercial space or private companies is leading the charge. So I think this is our time. You know, we can stay asleep or we can wake up and really ride the wave. Brownsville will be at SpaceCom in Florida. We'll be represented there. And we will have Brant and a lot of support to the companies that are here now and the companies that are looking to locate to Brownsville. So we're there, we're ready.
And let me follow up, Steve, on in this approach, it's multifaceted, right? It requires so many things. Workforce, obviously, capital, incentives, but one thing that's lost in this is also support and infrastructure. And an example of that is if you drive out to SpaceX today, SpaceX is spending almost $1 million of their own money to rebuild the Highway 4 out there because the state's moving too slow, and they haven't had that state support to get it done. So they can't afford to wait for the state to move. But if the state had a little bit more strategic effort here, that's something that would probably get done a lot faster. But because it hasn't, they're taking it upon themselves to do that.
I briefly just want to add an international, more global macro view of this wake up. So the whole world's waking up. If you look at the sovereign wealth funds of the world, the largest source of capital, really were created by oil and gas out of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Oman, the Central Asia countries of Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, even Norway, Sweden, Finland. Those large sources of capital were oil and gas. So most of those countries have publicly declared that they're rotating their industries out of oil and gas, like literally. And also the asset allocation of their sovereign wealth funds are not investing in oil and gas anymore. So those countries are waking up. I spent a lot of time in UAE talking about what are they rotating into. A year ago, it wasn't space, or 2 years ago, it was ag tech, clean tech, fintech, all these new industries that are reimagining the way that they do things. We still need food, water, friendship, and power, but we're going to do it in a different way. And when I brought space, I said space actually helps all these things. And they woke right up. They said, absolutely, we have to do it. So it's not just America waking up, it's really the whole world.
Mayor, this is on topic because this is an economic development organization that's hosting the press conference. But it's on trying to help restore downtown Brownsville, and it's something we've been trying to do since well over a year ago with the Trump White House. Now, your fire chief, your epidemiologist, your everybody I've talked to in City Hall, including yourself, you were the first elected official who came on board to endorse trying to have a trial to let CBP open the bridge so anybody shows up at the bridge, they want to get a COVID shot, they get a ticket, they come to downtown Brownsville and you get that COVID shot, they spend money in the downtown area, they go back to Matamoros, then within 30 days they come back and shop again. Well, here we are. We're right on top of Thanksgiving and Christmas again, and now the cities of Roma and Rio Grande City have joined us because they want to do the same there in a small city. We're the biggest city. That fits well with the trial. And so, therefore, we are pushing today, as we pushed Senior Senator John Cornyn a few weeks ago here at the Port of Brownsville. In 30 minutes, John Cornyn got the White House to react. In 30 minutes. So we're going to rely on John Cornyn. Would you join with me today in asking Senator John Cornyn to get Mayorkas, our Secretary who handles Homeland Security, and the President of the United States, because I'm here on my cell phone, that's where the ball is right now. I don't have miedo. I've been pushing presidents around since Beulah and President LBJ. So I have no miedo about asking the White House to do something. Would you join with me today in asking John Cornyn to again go to the White House and get Mayorkas to let us have this trial here, Roma, and Rio Grande City?
Absolutely. I think it's important. We've done some COVID vaccines already with Matamoros. We did 3,000 vaccines about 2 months ago. I'm always in support of vaccinating Mexican citizens that are coming into the U.S. I think that's a big point in the new opening of the bridges. I mean, that's been clearly stated by the administration that those that are vaccinated are going to be allowed in, I guess, starting, well, now, today. But it's expected that the only people that are going to be coming in a couple months are going to need to have their vaccine. So I fully support that initiative, absolutely.
So you support going to Senator John Cornyn to get the job done for us again?
Yep.
Anybody else?
Easy question, Ron.
I was wondering if it's too soon, or you already have companies, have your sights set on companies that you plan to support. And Mary, you mentioned a few minutes ago something about 3 companies already on the platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've done 3 already.
Yeah. Well, it's not too soon. In fact, I think I'm a little late. I need to get going. So on the Hatchery side, the Hatchery is, when we designed this ecosystem of companies, we said, hey, if people are doing something well, maybe we don't need to reinvent it. Like the accelerator, Techstars does a good job. CDL up in Toronto does a good job. So we didn't want to rebuild a new accelerator. But what we did want to do is a Hatchery. And what a Hatchery is a weaponized think tank. A think tank that actually does something other than just writing a paper. So the think tank is looking at, and it's a hatchery incubator. So the idea is, let's have an inventory of all this IP around the world that has created, a lot of capital went in to create that IP, and we're going to encode that IP in a data model that we could search it. And then we're going to have a bunch of problems in space or on planet Earth that are being underserved or not served at all. And then we're going to correlate these 2 inventories, and we're going to pop a idea out of the bottom saying, hey, if we leverage that IP, we can create an interesting company, and then we'll have a discussion about it, add capital, add leadership, add skills, and we have a new company. And the new company will be in tune to the local strategy. So in Canada, we wouldn't produce another launch company because they don't want launch companies. We would probably do robotics or AI. Here, we would tune the inventory to do something different. And then the other side of it is the incubator. Once the egg is hatched, you want to incubate it and do more for it. We're also going to incubate companies from the outside that we didn't hatch. So what I am looking for is a couple of companies in the area that require some incubation. What's incubation? Incubation is really if they have any kind of blind spots in terms of skill sets. If we have a technical leader that doesn't know a lot about business, or a business leader that needs some technical help, or if they need access to the Canadian Space Agency, NASA, or any type of really acceleration around business, we would like to help those companies, and some capital will come along with that. So that's one thing that, I would like to get a little bit of traction on this trip, and Helen and I are talking about some companies that might be good candidates. The second part is Space Ventures, which is a public platform. It's crowdfunding. So crowdfunding, I don't know if you know, you could only raise $1 million a year, and there are some structural problems. And I helped lobby the SEC, and our last SEC commissioner, Jay Clayton, I found out was a little bit of a space geek, and we kind of sent a message. We said, well, $1 million in a space company, you can only buy 2 hoses and a valve. Right, we need more money than that. So, and we lobbied for a little more. So we got it up to 5 million, which 5 million is a great number for seed and pre-seed. So we have 3 companies on the platform raising from the public. One is a carbon fiber pressure vessel. So all the tanks within the rockets right now, and Elon tried to solve this problem, but I think, and I hope I'm not misstating his thinking, but he couldn't solve it, so he stuck with stainless steel. He probably knows he has to solve it at some point, but it's just going too slow, so he said, screw it, I'll just do stainless steel. So we have one great company that does pressure vessels. Another one is radiation protection material. So in space, very few assets are protected from radiation. In fact, I spoke to astronauts in the International Space Station. There's very little protection. They only have one room. They all run into it. So this company has a very interesting polymer-based, so it's a plastic. And the third one is computing in space. So, and that's a public platform. People apply. We had 200 space companies apply to be on the platform. So our responsibility as a platform is not to choose it like a VC, because it's not our money. We work for the people, and we're licensed by FINRA and SEC to make sure that the companies are valid companies with good actors, and then we choose the right company. So, correct. They're all, so Space Ventures, great question. Space Ventures is only accessible by U.S. companies. Now, international people can invest in them, but it has to be a U.S. company. We might like to repeat that platform around the globe, but it's very complicated.
I may add is, if you're a company, this is the pitch out there here in Brownsville that is interested in the hatchery, has great ideas, maybe you're the business or the technology component. I mean, this is the company for you. This is why we're here and we're creating you here. So I know there are companies out there, they reach out many times every week, and reach out to the City of Brownsville, reach out to the Greater Brownsville Incentive Corporation. 9.8 is working on their office space in the upcoming months, so we're very excited here. I also want to recognize Commissioner De Los Santos is here also in support of this company.
All right. With that said, it looks like this concludes our press conference. Again, thank you so much for coming on this Monday morning. It's a tremendous announcement as we continue to build our infrastructure. And thank you once again.